Everyone, and welcome to our 9 o'clock chat with author Amanda Searcy, who has written two thrillers for teens, The Truth Behind the Lies and Watch You Burn. Welcome, Amanda, and thank you so much for chatting with us tonight.
Hello, thank you. And I have to warn you, it's monsoon season here in New Mexico, and there's a thunderstorm going on outside. So if you hear crashing in the background, that's what it is.
Thanks for the warning. We actually last year chatted with Rosalind Eves, and she was in a hotel room, and there was very rowdy people behind her.
Oh
no! So can you please start off with a little bit of an introduction and tell us about yourself and a little bit about your background?
Sure. I live here in New Mexico, where it is currently thunderstorming, and I write a lot of books about New Mexico and about the Southwest. It's where I've always lived, and I love the desert, and I like to write about it. So in addition to writing, I actually also work for my public library. So I thank everybody for coming out tonight to your public library, and thank you to all the staff who work really hard to make this happen.
Absolutely. So your latest book is titled Watch You Burn. Can you give us a little synopsis of it?
Sure. It's about a 17-year-old named Jenny who's living in Ohio with her mom, and then she has to move to New Mexico to live with her father, who's actually renovating an old motel, and she ends up living in the motel. And the reason that Jenny has to move to New Mexico is because she sets fires. She has almost an addiction to setting fires. So the police are kind of on to her in Ohio after a fire in an abandoned house. So she moves to New Mexico, and she really, really wants to start over again and be a new person who doesn't have to do this. But she's living right on the river where there's a bunch of really dry trees, kind of forested area, but it's the desert, so it's always really dry. And she can't resist, and she sets a fire, and someone sees her. And she doesn't know who it is, but she starts kind of getting some messages from this person, and there are some murders then in the town, and she begins to fear that then maybe she's going to be next.
Yeah, I love this book. I read it in one sitting because
thank you.
Yeah, I had to know what happens.
Thank you. That's always so nice to hear.
So I want to know more about the idea of like her being an arsonist and setting the fires. And did you look into like the psychology of that at all? Like I guess that is kind of a thing that like people have that proclivity. So do you know anything about that?
Well, for Jenny, it's more like an addiction. It's kind of like an addiction to anything else. It's something she does when she starts feeling really bad. It makes her feel better, but then she feels terribly guilty about doing it, which makes her feel bad. And she ends up in this cycle over and over again. So it's kind of less about setting the fires than it is sort of about addiction.
And I found myself rooting for her the entire story. Like, I realized she's not doing something that's good, but I just really didn't want her to get caught. So why do you think that is, that we just like root for her throughout the story?
Because she really wants to be different. She really wants to change. It really hurts her when she starts these fires. She really doesn't want to do it. It's not like she gets a lot of joy out of it. It's like that momentary sort of release that she gets, but then it's awful again. And so I think you're really hoping that she gets through this because it really does cause her a lot of pain.
So you do a fantastic job of revealing things slowly throughout the book and creating tension. So how does that come about in your writing? Do you plan it out all beforehand, or just kind of make it up as you go?
I do. I outline everything. I learned my lesson with my first book, The Truth Beneath the Lies, where I didn't really outline, and I had to basically, once I'd written the whole book, I had to take it apart and outline it and then fix it, because especially if you're going to write a thriller where it gets really complicated and you want to have surprises and twists and a big ending, you really have to know absolutely everything that happens before you start writing. Not everything. I don't do a super detailed outline, but I know all the big things that are going to happen, and I really, really carefully outline the ending so I know how we're going to get there.
And what do you like about writing thriller suspense books?
Well, I love reading them. I mean, that's one of the things that really draws me to it. I like the twists. I like taking readers in different directions. I like writing those endings. It's hard, you have an idea and you think this is where I want to get to, and then you have to figure out how it goes. And sometimes that's really difficult, but it's really fun too. And you can think of all kinds of creative ways to get from point A to point B to point C. And I really like that.
Yeah, I think when it comes to the thriller genre, I enjoy like not knowing where I'm gonna land because I feel like a lot of times with fiction, like I can kind of foresee what's gonna happen. So like having everybody like a suspect or is kind of thrilling.
And it's so fun writing red herrings too. It's so fun to say, I'm gonna toss this out over here and like make you look this direction and then go another way. And I think that's really fun, and you can get really creative with that too.
So when did you start writing?
Well, I didn't really start writing until I was an adult, actually. I always got told that I was a good writer, like when I was in mid school and high school, but it felt so much like school to me, and the writing assignments we had to do in school were just never really interesting to me. So I never really thought of it as a thing until I was kind of an adult, and I'd always really liked stories and telling stories. And one day I kind of thought, I could just sit down and tell a story. And so that's kind of how I got started.
And what made you decide to write for a teen audience?
I absolutely love YA literature. It didn't really exist when I was a teen, and I guess I'm kind of making up for it now. But I tried writing all kinds of things. I tried writing for adults, and I tried writing picture books and for younger kids. And I hit YA, and it was just like, that's my sweet spot. I absolutely love YA. I have a real passion for it. I love to read it. I love to buy it from my library, and it just clicked for me. And I think there are so many books now that teen me would have just absolutely adored, and I love them as adult me too.
I agree too. I remember when I was a teen, like I feel like the only thing to read was like Sweet Valley High and Fear Street,
Mhm.
and like there wasn't really a lot of options. So Bill and I were talking about this at the last author chat, is that it's so amazing what's happening in the YA landscape. There's so many more options for people, and the teens can actually see themselves in books now.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Because I remember there were the Sweet Valley High, and there were some kind of sweet romance books that were kind of written for teens, but there was absolutely nothing else. I mean, if you wanted to read science fiction or fantasy or really anything, it just didn't exist. So I love all the variety now. I love all the risks that authors are taking to kind of take it to the next level. And even in the last 10 or 15 years, it's changed so much. And I think that's really great.
Absolutely. What made you decide, or I'm sorry, I asked that question. What's the most challenging aspect of writing?
You know what? It's just sitting down and doing it. It's probably what pretty much every author will tell you. It's just you have days where you would rather do anything but sit down and write. And there are days when it's really exciting, but making yourself go back through the hard times, and when you're stuck and when you just want to do something else, I think that's the hardest part.
So I actually stole kind of some of these questions from like inside the actor studio, but I love how simple they are, and it's just a unique way. Other than I know authors get a lot asked a lot of the same questions over and over again. I think it's kind of fun. So what's your favorite word?
My favorite word lately is incredulous. And I don't know why, but I sent a manuscript to my agent, and she pointed out like the 27 times I used the word incredulous. Every one in my book was incredulous. So I'm guessing that for some reason right now that's my favorite word. And I'm
Funny how
incredulous
that
about
happens. That we go through like phases of saying certain phrases or certain words a lot.
that.
So what's your least favorite word?
I hate the word stinky. I don't know why. It just sounds bad to me. I don't like what it means. I don't like the way it sounds. Just anytime someone says the word stinky, it just, ugh, I just don't like it.
What scares you?
So I've thought about this, and this is going to be kind of a funny answer, but trees, and not just trees in general, but I've noticed in all my books, I always have really deep, dark forests or really forested areas where there's bad things or potential bad things waiting for my characters. And I live in the desert, and I can see for 50 miles in every direction. So I guess deep down subconsciously somewhere, I'm afraid of really deep woods. So all of you out there who live in really wooded areas, I think you're really brave.
Yeah, I'm coming to you from Michigan, and I love forests. It
Yes.
I don't know if you read Jennifer Donnelly's Stepsister, but the main character actually finds comfort in going into the deep forest. So
Oh, and I think trees are beautiful, and I think forest is beautiful, but I guess I just subconsciously, somewhere deep down inside, that's maybe it's like kind of a fairy tale thing, where all the fears live. And I'm not used to it because, I like to be able to see everywhere all the time.
yeah. So what makes you laugh?
So something that makes me laugh every time is, those little outfits that they put dogs in, where it has, you put their feet in the bottom legs, and then it has little legs on the top, and they run and they look like a little man running. That cracks me up every single time I see that. I can watch it on YouTube all day long and make me laugh all day long. So I don't have a dog, but if I did, it would be wearing one of those little outfits all the time, and I would just be laughing all the time.
That hilariously reminds me of I had to teach a PowerPoint class, and
Mm-hmm.
I decided to make like a fake, PowerPoint presentation to show the class, and it was pets in costume. Should you or shouldn't you? And yeah, it had all these great pictures of pets wearing like hot dog costumes and all kinds of stuff.
I get that. I have a cat, and I have resisted all the time dressing her up, but someday I'm going to give in because I would really like to dress her up.
What's your favorite food?
Pizza and chocolate, hands down. I could eat both of those things all day long.
If you had to choose a career other than what you currently do, what would you do?
Oh, I would be a zookeeper, and I actually have asked if they would let me please work at the zoo, and they expect you to know what you're doing there. And just because you have a cat, they don't let you feed the tigers. But I would so love to feed the animals at the zoo. That would kind of be my dream job. But
You
they want you
actually
to know what
live
you're doing for
close
that.
by a zoo, or
What?
do you actually live close by a zoo?
Yeah, we have a really, really lovely zoo here, a really big one, and I think that would be really fun to work there. But maybe someday they'll let me volunteer there, but they probably won't ever let me feed the animals.
Yeah, I volunteer for the Detroit Zoo, and I love it. And but everybody always asks you, "Oh, do you get to feed the animals?" I'm like, no, there's like professionals that do all of that.
You
So
have to go to a lot of school to get to feed the animals, apparently.
you really do. What profession would you never want to do?
Anything that involves drawing, because I cannot draw at all. I even tried taking some professional lessons, and I don't have that talent, and I'm really envious of people who do. So if I had to be something like an architect, my buildings would just fall down, because it's not a skill that I have at all, and it would not be good for anybody.
What has been your favorite place to travel to?
I absolutely love the beach. I like to go whale watching. So pretty much any place that has beach, warm beach, cold beach, it doesn't matter to me. I really like the ocean and walking along the ocean.
What do you like to do in your downtime?
Oh, so that's a good question. I don't really have a lot of downtime. I do a lot of writing in my downtime. I like to binge TV. I've been learning how to crochet. That's pretty much takes up the little bit of time that I have.
So, you work in a library. We actually have a lot of librarians we're chatting to this evening. But do you have any like distinct memories of an interaction with in a library or with a librarian when you were growing up?
Oh, so many. I mean, we spent all the time in the library when I was little, and it was always a really, really fun, happy place. I mean, it's full of books. Why wouldn't it be a great, happy place? But I remember when I was in kindergarten, my mom actually volunteered at my little school library. And sometimes when my day was over, because we still had half day kindergarten then, she would still have to work in the library. So I would go and join her there. And I remember the librarian reading stories to the fifth graders, who were just, the coolest kids on the planet, because they were the big kids. And she let me sit and join them. And it was just kind of magical. She was one of those great storytellers, and she was reading this book, and I was just kind of captivated. And she looked at me with the same eye contact that she did all the big kids, and that made me feel really special. So that's a really long time ago memory.
I love
And I
that.
have tons of memories from working in the library too. that are really special to me.
Absolutely. It's great when you like it's a great profession because you get to help so many people in so many different ways. And you have those moments where you realize like how rewarding it is.
Absolutely, yeah.
So what have you read in the last year?
Well, recently I've been on a real sci-fi kick. So I just read Aurora Rising, which
Oh, I
was
love that.
so fantastic. And I had actually just read the Illuminae files right before that. And
Mhm.
I just kind of continued on in that sci-fi thing. And I'm really looking forward to the next book in that Aurora Rising series. I also just finished Finale, part of
Oh,
the
Caraval.
Caraval series.
Yeah.
Yeah, which was a really great series. I mean, even if you're not really into fantasy, it's like eating dessert. It's kind of how I thought, especially the first book. It was like delicious.
And if you had to pick a favorite fictional character, who would you choose?
So that's a really hard one because you fall in love with so many characters when you read a book. But I think my favorite fictional character is Snape from Harry Potter, and he was my favorite pretty much from book one in Harry Potter. And I won't give away any spoilers in case there's anyone out there who hasn't read those books yet. But I really like characters that are super complicated, and you learn more and more and more about them and why they do the things that they do. And I thought that he was a pretty cool character and a really well written character that was very interesting, even though he wasn't one of the main characters in that book or those books.
Yeah, I think a lot of people feel the way that you do, and they like the complexity of his character. And I have a friend that was definitely her favorite character in the Harry Potter series. She was very sad when Alan Rickman passed away.
Oh, I was too. Yes.
What was your favorite childhood book?
My favorite childhood book?
Hmm.
I have it here. So this book was ancient even when I was little. It's called The Plant Sitter by Jean Zion. So you could still get this in the library when I was really little, but it's about this boy who is taking care of his neighbor's plants while they're on vacation, and he waters them too much and they take over the whole entire house, which is kind of funny after what I just said about trees. But I really like this book, and I found it at a used book sale several years ago, which was just amazing to me. So this was my very favorite book, and it probably still exists around there in a few libraries, but it's pretty ancient now. There's a price tag on this copy that says 95 cents. So that tells you how old that book is.
That's amazing. Yeah, I don't think you can. Well, maybe on like Kindle, you could get a deal for that.
Maybe, yeah.
um, what is your favorite TV show, movie, band?
Well, TV show. I don't know that I have a favorite because I really like TV shows, and I really like TV shows now because there are so many good ones that you can just sit and binge all the way through. But lately, I've been really into the 100, so I was kind of late to this because they're already on season like 5 or 6. But that is a really great sci-fi show, and I had read the books quite a while ago, and the show is really different. So if you like sci-fi, I totally think you should
Is
check that out.
that the one where they disappear and then they come back? Or
No, it's the one where it's after a big nuclear holocaust and people are in the are living in a space station, and so they send down 100 teens to see if the Earth is survivable, if the radiation has cleared, and it kind of goes from there. It was based on a series of books.
do you have a favorite movie and band?
Favorite movie I seem to really just be into sci-fi right now. Independence Day, the original one, has always been one of my very favorite movies because it was funny and suspenseful, and there were alien invasions, and I've always really liked that movie. I've seen it probably 100 times. And favorite band, I have to kind of go old school here, but U2 has always been my favorite band my whole entire life.
Do you ever get to see them in concert?
I did a couple of years ago. I actually went to Phoenix and saw them, and it was a good show.
So, is there an author that you would freak out about meeting in real life, like completely fangirl out?
I would love to meet Suzanne Collins, who wrote The Hunger Games, just because I would love to talk to her about those books because they are just so amazing. And she hardly ever gives interviews, and she doesn't really do many appearances. So she's kind of this mysterious figure. So I'd really love to meet her and talk about those books. And she's going to have a new one, a Hunger Games prequel coming out next year, and that's really exciting. And I'd like to get the inside scoop on that.
I hadn't heard about that. That makes me very excited too.
Yeah, I think next May it's going to be coming out. They just announced it in the last couple of weeks. So it's going to be a set hundreds of years before that in one of the very first Hunger Games. So it's going to be the same world, but way before the books that we know.
I wonder if we'll see some of the characters that we who are younger who kind of came back, who had been previous winners.
I don't know. It's kind of mysterious. They've only just announced that it's going to be. So I'm sure we'll hear much more about it in the next year.
What projects are you currently working on?
Well, I just finished another thriller. That's still kind of top secret, but I'm super proud of it. And I'm going to start something else new soon. That's going to be another thriller, but I might give it a little bit of a sci-fi twist. We'll see. I haven't started my outline yet, so I'm not exactly sure where that one's going to go.
And what's on your bucket list?
My bucket list, well, I can tell you as an author from my bucket list is I would love to have an audiobook. I haven't gotten to have an audiobook yet. And I think I love listening to audiobooks. I listen to them in the car every day. And I would really, really love to have one of my books made into an audiobook. I think that would be so great. And I'd also love to have a book translated into Spanish because there are so many Spanish speakers where I live. And I think it would be great to be able to share my books in Spanish as well.
I love that. I'm obsessed with audiobooks. I was on YALSA committee for 2 years, and that's a question that I like to ask authors if they have audiobooks, how involved in the process they are of the production.
Mm-hmm.
And Bill last time actually said that with his last book, they actually let him select the 2 narrators for his 2 main characters. I thought was really exciting.
Oh, that would be so fun. Yes, that would be great. Because there's nothing worse than reading a book and then hearing a narrator and thinking, that's just not right.
Exactly. And I told him, I was like, yeah, I think Max was the best ever. And he's like, yeah, I really had to fight for that guy. They did not want him. So, well, good job, because I agree wholeheartedly. So what advice would you give to your teenage self?
So it's really funny. When I was a teen, one of my best friends was kind of considered the writer among us, and kind of all the adults in our world just kind of decided unilaterally that she was going to be the writer and the author, and the rest of us were going to be other things. And it never, ever occurred to me as a teen that there could be more than one writer, more than one author. So I would go back and tell my teen self to kind of not listen to what all those adults were saying, because I think we really got put into, and these were people who had the best of intentions. It's not like anyone was trying to do us harm by saying this, but to just kind of, that the way the adults saw us were not the way that we saw ourselves. And I think it took a long time to realize that I was not the person that those adults saw, that I could be a writer too, or an author. And my friend who is supposed to be the author is actually a teacher, and she loves being a teacher. So we all found our thing in the end. But I'd like to go back and tell my teen self that just because that's what the adults in our world were saying doesn't mean that it had to be true.
I love that. That's really good advice. Because, sometimes like adults have expectations of what your future should be, but really your future should be what you want it to be.
Absolutely.
So our final question tonight is, do you have any advice for aspiring writers?
It's probably the advice that all aspiring writers get, and that's because it's true, and that's that you just have to keep going. You have to keep writing. You have to keep trying. You have to keep showing people your work. That's the only way to really, if you want to be published, it's really the only way to get published, is to just keep going and to just pick yourself back up again. And it's really kind of a lesson for life in general. But certainly, if you want to become a published author, you have to just learn to just keep doing it.
Awesome. Excellent advice. Thank you so much, Amanda, for joining us this evening and answering all of our questions.
Thank you, and I hope everyone's having a great night. It sounds like a great event.
Thank you so much.